gentle and warm whisper telling me that I am alive. I had to escape. I had no choice. Escape to love, to hope, to live, to figure out what that force inside me was. Maybe I will change the world. Maybe I will choose a different path. Now, it's up to me to decide. My name is Kara. I am one of them. This is our story.
Hello, welcome to the FOXHOLE feed, a special episode 23. This is going to be the Sony's Paris Game Show Day 0 episode, and man, lots and lots and lots of megatons to talk about. I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, so as you may see from opening video I had in the beginning, yeah, they had a pretty impressive showing. Their impressive was beyond impressive, I would say. Lots of megatons announced, so many new games. Just gonna jump right into it. Game you guys see right here in the bottom corner of the screen here is called Boundless. So Boundless is a PC, PlayStation 4 title that's going to be essentially cross-play between both titles. So it's an open world online MMO-ish type game. I would say MMO-ish because I don't really want to give it that title. And apparently, you could play with everyone you see in the world before you all play in the same universe, whether it be PlayStation 4 or PC. I get a very Minecraft-like vibe from it in terms of the building stuff, in terms of sort of how it looks. Also sort of get a little bit of a No Man's Sky-ish feeling. I actually thought it was No Man's Sky when it was first being shown. So very interesting. Weird looking dudes, and it's like I don't know if like the weird gibberish language they're speaking is something you could just like preset to all your people, and like they're all fighting like this weird battle. So it's so weird because it's like you're not really sure what you're looking at, or like what is this world they're walking into through these portals. Is it one whole world? Are they all separate worlds? Who knows? But very interesting like trailer and first look. So something to very much keep a look on. The other title that was shown was called Vector. So Vector looks like it's sort of in vein of like Amplitude and other music titles. It's like looks very rhythm based, I would say. It wasn't really a title I think I was as interested in. I mean, it looks okay if people are into titles like like the original Fez or like the original Amplitude, which I think is still getting remade right now on PlayStation 4. Yeah, it was interesting, but I don't know if I would be into a game like that, but hey, news nonetheless. In continuing with new titles that were announced, a title by House Marquee, the team that did Super Stardust and Dead Nation, and they did Resogun for PlayStation 4. This is another one of their titles, and it's called MatterFall. So MatterFall is essentially like, to my understanding, something about an alien, something about a guy fighting like these aliens called Smart Matter, and like over the top action like they've known from their type of games that they've made. But I don't really necessarily know exactly how it's going to play, but my expectation is it's going to be a twin stick shooter similar to Dead Nation and Super Stardust and Resogun and all the games that they've been known to do. So it's very likely it's going to be like one of those two games, either Super Stardust or Resogun or one of them. Now, in terms of news regarding release dates, so many games get release dates. So finally, lots of big titles finally getting confirmation and 100% release dates. No Man's Sky confirmed to get release date for June. Trailer is very interesting. You finally get to hear some voice acting from whoever I would say is the narrator, because I believe they stated there's going to be a narrator that's in the game. So No Man's Sky is going to be coming out June 2016. We still don't have an idea of, if it's a possibility that June 2016 date has something to do with possibly PlayStation VR. So in the trailer, they show some little bit of nighttime footage. They show a little bit of some takeoff stuff. They show some space battle stuff in terms of fighting other people. And that's about it. They didn't really show anything that I guess we haven't known about already. But yeah, if you're a No Man's Sky fan, definitely check it out. It's short, interesting. I would say most of it you're seeing about in the corner of the screen. I mean, you could see it yourself, but I would say the gist of it is in the corner of the screen that you're seeing here. So June is the release date for No Man's Sky. Nothing regarding VR was announced about it, but people will continue to speculate on. Now, Ratchet and Clank, the remake anyway of Ratchet and Clank trailer was shown. Not too much that we haven't already seen before. So the only thing that's sort of reiterated is its spring release. I think they gave us a quarter 1 release window, previously when it was actually first shown. They gave us just a quarter 1 window, so we get a little bit more footage than we got before. Yeah, that's about it. Other than that, it was sort of here's a trailer, and here's a release window. The release window is spring, no specific date stated. Uncharted 4 finally gets a release date. You get a slight trailer, you get a beta announcement. Nothing huge, I would say, nothing extremely spectacular. You just sort of got a beta announcement and the announcement of the actual release date. The release date is going to be March 18th. Which I'm happy about because March 18th is actually my birthday, so I'm very happy about that release. So they got the spring is really packed so far. So spring has just a ridiculous load of titles that are coming. So the beta is going to be coming out in December for Uncharted 4, which is the multiplayer beta for those that pre-ordered the game. And I'm actually sure there's probably another way they're going to allow people to play this game. I don't think, they'll probably do an open one. I don't see them just continuously having it that way in terms of people who pre-ordered. You'll probably be able to get in there, or excuse me, the people who bought the collection get the beta, but I'm pretty sure you could probably also get in there by having, pre-ordering it, or they'll probably make it open. Another release date that I know everybody was looking forward to, some members of our FOXHOLE family. Street Fighter V finally getting a release date announced of February 16th, which is actually funny because that's right around buddy of mine Craig's birthday. So Craig's birthday is going to be, it's going to be a little bit before Craig's birthday. So Craig's going to be getting an early birthday present of Street Fighter V, and it's going to be coming out. So speaking of Street Fighter, on stage, as you guys see over here in the bottom of the video, Yoshi Ono, famous, Street Fighter creator, producer, it's jokingly saying they have a new character and his new special character in Street Fighter 5, and it's actually the creator, producer of Tekken, and which is very funny. So that's how he introduces them out, and they sort of have a little, go at each other, as they would say, and they're sort of kind of making fun of each other and joking, and and so right then and there, he comes out, creator of Tekken, announces Tekken 7, which is awesome. So announces Tekken 7, which was already released in arcades for PlayStation, or excuse me, released in arcades in Japan. So now they're announcing, the PlayStation 4 version of Tekken 7, which I know a lot of people kind of were expecting somewhat. I was expecting an announcement actually at Tokyo Game Show and was surprised it wasn't there, because that was one of the guesses that I had, was that it was going to be there. I feel it was an educated guess to believe that Tekken 7 would be at TGS. And I was wrong. It wasn't there at TGS. It wasn't there at all. So there's a nice cool trailer of you know, Tekken 7, talking about the legacy of the, you know, history of the company, talking about you know, the Hahachi family's like legacy, which is kind of cool. The Mishima's family legacy, excuse me, which is kind of cool. So, you know, Hahashi's wife is gonna be in there, and yeah, I like all the lore of Tekken. Tekken has a really badass lore. So very, very, very happy that they're finally talking about Tekken 7. My only guess is it's 2016. Don't know when, don't know where. My only guess is just, you know, clearly 2016. They don't really talk much afterwards about it in terms of release, merely just coming soon whenever it's gonna come. Now the segue into our next segment, talking about interesting stuff going on in terms of this game. It's also going to be in VR. Now, the last episode, I sort of talked about, you know, the rumor of, or not even rumor, technically it's in some respect like pseudo confirmed, that Street Fighter 5, you know, has some sort of VR element in it because it was found in the PC code. So I'm sitting here thinking that, oh, you know, they'll announce Street Fighter 5 to have some VR mode, and they don't. They don't announce any VR mode for Street Fighter 5, but Tekken gets announced for VR. How? I don't know. Tekken gets announced in the VR. So VR is going to be in Tekken 7. In what form? I have no idea. So I have no idea what Tekken 7 or Street Fighter 5 are doing with VR. I don't know if it's a spectator thing or if there was some way they want you to really fight with it. I mean, I see it in terms of an augmented reality type thing. I see it being, it's possible. Just to have a different sort of like viewpoint. Tekken would be even harder because it's not just a 2D plane like Street Fighter, it moves. So I this is kind of weird on how they're going to actually do VR for that title. In terms of new announcements for VR, Until Dawn has a VR version pretty much announced. So Until Dawn has a, you know, horror VR version where it's like on rails and it's like a roller coaster. How this ties into Until Dawn in terms of anything that they did in the previous game, I don't know. Besides being a horror, I don't think it's going to lend anything near what the original actual, you know, title entails. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I merely think it's just, I think it's just horror. I think that's sort of what it is. It's called Until Dawn, Rush of Blood. And I just think that they just want to use VR to have this roller coaster horror type thing, but not necessarily the way they traditionally did Until Dawn, you know, a game that's already released. So I think this is them trying out VR. For all we know, they're probably testing out VR for their next title. Their next title might be both VR and, you know, just regular. From what I've been hearing from everyone in terms of the development community, VR is something that has to be made from the ground up to, you know, work properly. Like, this doesn't sound like it's just a thing, like it could just work any other way. It has to basically be made for it to specifically work. So after that, more new titles being announced. Crytek comes out, you know, one of the CEOs of Crytek comes out, you know, talks about, you know, lineage of like VR and starts telling you about like when he was a kid, and like he's just telling you like little emotional stories regarding his excitement of like new development and new experiences. And in some respect, even though it just sounds like so like PR to say stuff like that, I have to agree with him. I feel like we don't really have what I would say are new medium experiences. Like when you're only going to get X number of PlayStations, you're only going to get X number of, you know, or excuse me, you're only going to get X number of Sprite to 3D. It's like, where do you go from Sprite to 3D? Yeah, we get better 3D, but not so much better where you're like, you know, you could, you know, changes everything. Right now we have some incredibly good looking games, like the very first trailer you guys saw when this episode started. I mean, we're already having games that look phenomenal, but, you know, though it's jaw-dropping and it looks really gorgeous, I don't think anybody is leaving away like, wow, what did I just see? Was that reality? No one's really leaving with that feeling. And I think that if we're not going to get to a point clearly where we're not going to just have something that's not 3D, then VR would be that next logical, oh my God moment of, I'm going to remember where I was the first time I did this. when you play a sprite-based game, the next latest and greatest sprite-based game is not going to change how you feel regarding the first time you played it. And the same thing goes for 3D, is that 3D will continuously clearly get better, but as time goes on, I don't know if you'll ever get that moment where you play, you know, a 3D game and you just, now it becomes that staple moment of where was I when I played this 3D game. Something like what he's talking about with VR, I understand. When you put that VR headset on, it is an experience where you're going to remember where you were the first time you tried it. You're going to remember the handful of experiences that you had in a way sort of like you went from sprite to 3D to this. From what I've seen from everyone talking about VR with Oculus Rift, from what I've tried from Oculus Rift, which is really interesting. I've only tried Oculus Rift once for a short period of time, but I can tell you that it does give you that feeling that, what am I doing? That I will remember how strange this felt. You do get the feeling where you want to turn around, where you want to look, and after a couple seconds you want to do things you ordinarily wouldn't just randomly do. But once you put that headset on, your brain begins thinking that way and begins wanting to do things the way it equates to what it's seeing in the actual world. So you do get that weird sense of your brain sort of tricking you, and your brain literally begins to feel that you're supposed to be doing something a certain way. You could put a controller in my hand, and I tried it with keyboard and mouse. You could have keyboard and mouse in your hand, you could have a controller in your hand. It's not really going to stop your brain from telling you, oh, something's in front of you, reach out and touch it. It's not going to stop that. You're always going to want to do that. Now, to get to the point here, he comes out, he starts telling you about these first moments of VR, and he shows off his new game. So Crytek making a PlayStation 4 VR title, basically called, what was it, Robinson the Journey. So it's called Robinson the Journey. Interesting game. It has this little like eye thing that's sort of like, the best way to explain it is basically the droid thing from Destiny, the robot thing from Destiny, AI thing that follows you around and talks to you, or even similar to the little robot things that follow you in Portal 2 and talk to you, or even Portal 1. So it's similar to that. So he has a little British accent, and he's like telling you shit, and you're in this world with these dinosaurs, and you're moving around. Do I question if it's real time or not? Not really, because CryEngine does look really fucking impressive, and I've seen, technical demonstrations of CryEngine, of even older CryEngine, running on hardware lesser than the PlayStation 4. So, gameplay, it's probably a really realistic representation of what the engine actually could do, and we don't really even know what this game entails to say whether it is or isn't, because it may not really be a game that uses so much processes that would, I guess, hurt its graphical fidelity. But you got these dinosaurs going around here, and there's Tyrannosaurus Rex, and the little guy turns around and asks you, to switch to another game, or ask if you want to switch to another game, which is making me wonder, okay, what is it? Is it virtual reality within virtual reality? Is it something like it runs somewhere else, like you are in another, I guess, plane? So I'm not really getting like where they're getting at with it, but we could only sort of assume anyway, in terms of what they mean by that. So we don't really know if you are really in that world, if you're representative of being in that world, or you're representative of a person playing a game that understands that they are playing a game in that world, which was actually kind of trippy. So more titles get announced for VR. Some game called Battlecry, or excuse me, not Battlecry, I believe it's called Battle Tanks. If I'm not saying this correctly, it's supposed to be coming first. You're fighting a whole bunch of tanks. Battle Zone. There's a lot of battles in games. So Battle Zone, tank game, VR tank game where you're fighting other tanks, very like pixely and strange, like augmented looking graphics. I also show off Riggs. So Riggs is, showing a new trailer, and he talks about like the whole like weird esports thing, which I don't really buy that. I mean, I don't really buy that, but he's trying to market the game. We kind of get what he means. So they try to give you the trailer, and they're trying to like show it to you like, oh man, look at how seriously they're taking the game. Even the commentator is like saying, oh man, they're going for a goal, and they're trying to make it as enticing as they can. Bless their hearts. All right, they're not doing this to be mean. They're doing their best to market the title. So Riggs was there. No release date announced of really any of the titles clearly that I mentioned in terms of being VR. Simply because they're probably not ready to announce the release date. They might announce it at PlayStation Experience, which I think is going to be the place where they're probably going to announce the release date of it. If you consider that they stated that 2016 was the year it releases, so it could be at next E3. But I think that it might be at PlayStation Experience. They might probably announce a release date. So like we all realistically assumed, Dreams was there. Alex Evans, one of the creators, developers at Media Molecule, was there to show off, their new PlayStation 4 title, Dreams. He goes into more detail regarding what the game is actually about in terms of how it plays, in terms of the play, share, create concept of it. And I'm actually glad that he did, because it gets to show people what I was stating in the last, episode of the feed, was that this is essentially, still a game similar to Little Big Planet. This is still a game about creating stuff and sharing the stuff created, and then manipulating the things that you've just created, and then sharing them with other people, and then taking other people's stuff and then changing those things. So this game is very much about that, while also having the weird puppeteering thing of moving the controller and, giving, the weird animations to your characters. So I think the way it was presented the first time might have been confusing to some. This video displays more of what the game is actually about, in terms of showing you how it plays, in terms of showing you all the unique things that you can do with it. Like I stated on the last podcast or the last Fox feed episode, they are stating very much that this is a game, in that this is still you making a game versus you're just making animations and trailers or whatever. Lots of people had questions of what it was, but I had a feeling it might be, still in the vein of Little Big Planet in terms of share, play, create type concept. And he states that several times through this video, which I like to hear. So it looks really colorful. It's like you could do so many interesting stuff with it, and he states that everything you see before you was all done on a PlayStation 4, and you get a little video near the ending that sort of shows you all the stuff that was being made really quickly in real time, which is interesting because it doesn't have you feel like you need to know anything about coding or programming or anything like that. They're very much making the design stuff of it seems to be very fast and very simple, but maybe that's because they're already aces at it. Who knows? No move necessary to it. It's actually the controller that they're using, so you don't really look like you don't need the move or anything special to do any of this, really. Next footage I'd like to talk about would be Horizon Zero Dawn. So Horizon Zero Dawn was there, as I think everybody kind of already knew Horizon was going to be there. So Killzone director, Horizon director was there, showing off the game. Still looks just as good. Still looks amazing. So you get to see some cool like Stegosaurus type things. They're weird giraffe robot. I want to say weird giraffe robot Brontosaurus type things. Maybe closer to giraffe than Brontosaurus, since those are much bigger and meatier. So shows a little bit of water footage of her walking through the water, which I really like. There's several moments in where they actually pause the game to show you how big the dinosaur is, and show you all around it, and start showing you weak points, which we've already seen the whole weak point stuff. The new footage that really comes from this really comes from the looting stuff. It comes from, manipulation of the actual area, where you're able to like put these little trip mines, they're trip wires all over the place, and then manipulate the herd to essentially run towards the trap that you've set up. So Aloy, stalking and planning, and then she sets up a trap, and then all the herd runs through the trap, and they all end up getting killed. And then the ace ones, because the herd is not even just made up of the same, they're made up of the same type, but I would say there are different tiers. So there's like your regular sheep like herd that are just followed, and then they're like the leaders, and the pack leaders are the ones that they'll stay behind to protect like the stragglers or whatever, and those are the ones you actually fight. They don't basically run from you, they just stand there to fight you to protect the rest of the herd. So she still has to fight them, so it's not just like they're all gonna run into it like sheep. There's gonna ones that are gonna stay behind it. She still has to fight to get elements. So they go later on to tell you that, you know, each of these, you know, animals has different elements that you use for different things to craft different stuff from. You get to see some tree destruction. You get to see what the looting looks like in terms of her grabbing stuff to actually loot away from them. So you get a more in-depth look that you didn't really get from the previous like trade shows. Destruction stuff looks pretty good from what I could see. It did look like the game sort of slowed down slightly when the explosion was going on. I could only probably likely attribute that to it still being early in the actual game. But it's very interesting footage. I really like what I've seen from it. I'm definitely getting a more deeper RPG feel from it in terms of how you loot, and then having a specific number of metal that you could then craft to build other stuff. I also like to know just how stacked you even come when you start the game. I don't really know if this starts off sort of like your you know, classic Zelda or Metroid or any RPG, to be quite honest with you, where you have nothing and then you sort of build from nothing, you know, beyond. And they're merely just showing you how powerful you can become and all the tools you can eventually create and make. But I'm pretty sure you're still going to start off with bare stuff and not a lot of stuff. You're going to start off not really having a deep amount of equipment. So I'm assuming that, but that's likely to be assumed. I wouldn't just give you everything in the beginning. Clearly you have to craft the rest of this junk. But very interesting nonetheless. Another thing I'd like to point out is I wasn't really sure if what I was seeing in the beginning of this video was waypoints or just stuff that, or animals that were already, you know, killed or destroyed prior to the demo starting, because it looked like they were waypoints. But looks like I'm wrong on that. It looks like it's merely just animals that were killed prior to the demo actually starting that sort of show that you could pick up items from them. There's also a nice little compass at the top, which I'm not sure if that was brand new or if that was in a previous footage. That sort of shows you the destination that you might even be looking at, shows your north, east, and this is still the same like little valley area that you've been seeing in all the demos, and I wonder if they're actually just doing that as to leave majority of the game to still be explored and seen. And if you didn't think there wasn't enough announcements, so Evolution Studios announces Drive Club bikes. So they got their little bike edition, or it's just called Drive Club Bikes. But yeah, apparently Drive Club Bikes, was speculated a while ago that Drive Club's bikes was either going to be something standalone or as DLC. I predicted that it was probably both, considering that that's not uncommon for something to release as a standalone thing and also release as DLC itself. If you might think of, what's the title I'm thinking of? It was Far Cry 3's DLC, and it was called like Dragon something, and it was something really crazy. But it releases as something separate, so you could buy this as DLC, like an add-on to your existing Drive Club game, or you could just buy it as a separate title. Great thing about it is it is available today. So they had their little cool today, right now. Later today, you could go pick it up right after this announcement is done. So you'll be able to play Drive Club Bikes pretty much like right now. So yeah, if you're a fan from it, you very much could play it. Very interesting. I'm not a huge racing fan, with the exception of probably a couple racers. I'm not a big racing fan. I didn't really think there was a lot of big racing announcements this trade show. And what I mean by I'm not really, you know, huge big fan about racers, not really. Yeah, is that Gran Turismo Sport was announced at Paris Game Show. So at the bottom over here, you know, see they're showing a little bit of footage, some awesome footage talking about some live action shit about 100 years of racing. So they're always going to be coming here telling you some historic shit. They're setting historic precedents. So they're showing you some history of motorsports and racing. Kazunori Yamauchi comes out, which we all knew was rumored that Kazunori was there. We all had a great idea that this game was going to be announced easily. That we had an idea it was going to be announced over here. My impressions of what I've seen from the game, incredible. The game looks phenomenal. Just a the smidgen of gameplay we've seen from it, shit like a real life. You're not even sure you're looking at the actual live action anymore to, you know, 3D. It's just like indistinguishable. It looks amazing. And so Kazunori comes out, you know, he starts talking about the history of GT, history of motorsport. He starts talking about having, you know, the FIA there supporting them. He starts talking about like the beta is going to be coming out apparently next year, 2016. So one could only guess that GT7 is to release 2017, which not going to shock me at all if it comes out ending of 2017, spring 2017. It won't shock me. You know, with GTs, it's done when it's done type deal. That's sort of how they treat Gran Turismos. Now, in the actual trailer of it, when they're showing GT, they state something that's very interesting. It says 7 to 77. It says from children to adults, anyone can participate. So it makes me question of what is GT Sport. Is GT Sport possibly an arcade version of Gran Turismo? So the fact that it's not necessarily called GT7 Prologue, because GT has always had its own modes. Now I know they've had GT Concept for PlayStation 2 before GT3 came out, and then they have, you know, GT or excuse me, probably before 4 came out, I believe they released that concept game, and, you know, GT Prologue for GT5 before GT5 came out. So this game is not necessarily titled, you know, GT7 Sport or GT7 whatever. It's titled, you know, Gran Turismo Sport. So it's going to tell me that the 7 to 77, I wasn't sure if they were just trying to joke and play with numbers with Gran Turismo 7, as I feel they're probably doing, but it's a big deal to say, you know, children to adults, anyone could participate. Is a big deal. That's saying something, because the Gran Turismo games are difficult and they have a high learning curve in terms of how you play them. You literally have to learn how to play a Gran Turismo game. It's so radically different. It's not necessarily something that you could just jump in there and start playing. You kind of have to, you do the license test. You have to basically go through their tutorial to say, if you know how to do these things, you'll know how to do everything else that comes before you, or you'll play our game and think it sucks. And that's which is true. I've talked about this numerous times with many, you know, fellow gamers. The idea that sometimes a game teaching you how to play it, or sometimes a game, you know, walking you through the understanding of how they want you to play it, helps you understand the game better. If they just sit you there and you have this assumption on how to play, you could essentially be playing it incorrectly and not knowing that what they're trying to go for with the title. So in this actual, you know, video, in the beginning of this video, it shows like one of the dudes from Top Gear playing, which I thought was kind of cool, and, you know, little kids playing with them, and I wonder if that's actually his like kid or grandkid or whoever that is them. But I find that very interesting. It's very telling of what they're doing with GT to call it that, to not put the 7 behind it, even if it's a, you know, prototype, beta, whatever you want to call it, tells me that they want GT Sport to be something different than, you know, the regular Gran Turismo titles. Sport might be a series of, you know, titles that they end up doing prior to Gran Turismos, to say, here are all of our aesthetics, our style, our menu, our everything that you guys like about us, but here's also it in a form that you could play if you do not like simulation titles. So I think that's kind of cool if that is indeed what they're going for. I know that arcade, you know, is not necessarily something many people like to throw around with their titles, because I think sometimes people get a false understanding of what they mean by arcade. Now, French developers pretty much owned this show, and they ended out the show, and they ended out the show in a really, really cool way. So I ended out the show with, you know, 2 other titles. One of these 2 titles I'm going to, you know, tell you about, which you see right here in front of you, which is Wild. This is a game we hadn't seen from in a while since it was actually announced. And, you know, this video goes on to display more things about it. Some interesting little facts about Wild. Apparently, Wild's world is, they stated, like almost the size of Europe. Like they stated it was almost like 1.1 the size of Europe or something really weird. So this character gets bit by a snake, and this guy's trying to help his tribe and basically he's the shaman, and he goes and he prays to like whatever bird spirits or whatever, and now you're controlling this bird, and the bird has the powers to basically seek things out and find things clearly that you're a human you cannot do. So it uses its sort of like hawk vision and bird vision to spot out snakes. So now that it sees the snakes, it goes and grabs them and then essentially brings them back to the shaman dude. So the shaman dude still needs to do something before he could either use the powers of the snake. I would assume just for anti-venom. This person got bit, needs a cure, and clearly the cure to cure snake venom is actually snake venom in terms of antibodies and all that fanciness. I mean, how he knows that is beyond me, but I'm sure some Native American people probably knew that shit before us. So he goes and he now goes on his journey to go there. You could mount bears, apparently. He calls a bear. he mounts the bear after he calls it, and then he uses it to walk far across the level, and he finds like this other group of crazy tribe members, and he needs to get past them in order to go to this specific area, so that way he could seek the spirit of the snake god, I would say. So in order for you to do that with any creature, you have to then bring that creature to the actual place to actually do that. So now that you're, controlling this bear, he goes there and he uses like these rabbits to control the rabbits to go after him. He uses like all these birds to attack all of them. So you could use nature to your advantage to get what you want, essentially. So it also shows there's a nice cool day and night cycle, which you guys see here, which is kind of cool. So I'm liking everything I'm seeing from this title, and everything he's talking about this title is what I sort of assumed it was probably like. So they did a good job with the first trailer of this game conveying the things that you can do in the actual game. So after he brings the snake back, he brings the snake back to help his little friend. That's about it. He goes and states that everything that you see before you is not scripted. It's just, the way the world is. Nothing is scripted in the actual game, and, these things will just happen and you'll just react to the things happening. So, unfortunately, no release date for Wild, no even release window, and that is rather unfortunate because it's one of the most interesting titles that I'm actually looking forward to. And out of all the titles announced, that's the title I wanted a good release date from. Only problem I would say with that is that I think we go under this weird assumption that there's a game coming out, and because it's by a smaller developer, I guess we expect it on a faster time frame, and that's my fault, my ignorance anyway. That's my fault, and the reality is game's gonna be done when it's done, and just like any other developer, regardless whether they're owned, not owned, what have you, smaller team, the game is being published by Sony, and to my understanding the IP is owned by them. But regardless, I think people have the idea that a smaller team is releasing faster. That is not the case. They're still a team. The game will still take time. It'll release whenever it's done. And the scope and size and everything else of the game, you won't surprise me that it'll take a while before it releases. So I'm not even holding my breath for the ending of 2016. This is sort of falling in a category of could even be 2017. So I'm sort of okay with that because it's sort of clear that this is not going to be a fast release for it. If it is fall of next year, I'll be happy about that too. Now, next title I want to show you guys. One of the episodes, last title I'm going to show you. One of the episodes of the FOXHOLE feed, I discussed this being a rumor, and I discussed the possibility of this possibly being a real game. So it turns out that rumor that I was discussing is being confirmed today. So, David Cage comes out, Quantic Dream comes out, starts talking about the infamous trailer. And the Kara trailer that was released years ago got over 27 million views. And we theorized whether that would be a game, and you guys are looking at it, it very much is a game. So now that we're seeing that this game exists and it's now a thing, he goes on to tell you that they've been working on it and that they worked on it because of the huge response. And I think that's awesome because I think all of us theorized that this would probably be their next title. I think it's really cool that it is. So, this robot, is in a new city or in a new life, basically, because never lived before. So she's talking about experiencing all the sensations all at once. cold and fear and sight, and everything is being experienced all at once for this android, or so to speak. So she's feeling all these things for the first time, and it's based in Detroit. So Detroit is the futuristic Detroit where she is sort of walking around, and I love that it's Detroit. So you get to see all these huge, you know, scenery and big city and all these people, and because they're showing this emphasis on the city and all these people, I wonder if the game is open world. I don't really know. They haven't really said anything, and they've never done an open world game. So I don't really know if it is, if it isn't. To make it in Detroit and to make it called Detroit about the city has to have something, you know, more to do with it. So I'm starting to question if, you know, this is more so like their previous games, or they're trying something different with making you have a little more control. I'm not sure, but it's about robots and the choosing of the city of Detroit. Almost lost track of what I was going to say to you guys. The choosing of the city of Detroit is amazing, and I like that they chose Detroit. Detroit is just, it symbolizes so much, and for a French developer to already, you know that, I think is cool, because he could have made it anywhere he felt like it, but choosing Detroit, very smart. It's where the automotive industry basically lost its touch, and it used to be one of the pioneering cities in the world in terms of making automobiles, and then now it's, you know, bankrupt. Something's interesting to say that here's a city that financially needs help, that is in ruin, that is in trouble. And financially, they're not all the way there. They've seen better days. And now, by taking that narrative of troubled city needs help, they take the same thing and say, well, let's just have these robots come in. And almost to make it seem as if, well, the factories and the robot stuff that they had make those cars, let's just say in some strange alternate universe that, you know, these robots exist and they have jobs. Why are these people pissed off for? It's very clear why they're pissed off. If you think of Detroit as being a bankrupt city, and you think of this future being, let's say, a continuation of the downfall of Detroit, the robots coming in don't necessarily help the people, because the people are losing their jobs to these robots who could do it better. So if you look at how these people are looking at her, and the robots that I love, like sort of stacked up in the corner, they're stacked up under their little like charge stations. I don't know what you would call them, and people are pissed off at them, and they're complaining about the jobs. And you could see that even without them really saying that in the actual trailer, even without them saying that, you know, with words, they're saying it with actions. You could see that maybe this is why they feel the way they feel. So these robot things are taking their jobs. I love the narrative. I love the dynamic. I like that they're going with that style and that understanding, and I really want to see how deep this goes. So enough talking about this game for once. It's called Detroit. I believe it's called Human something. Detroit Human something, Become Human, or Human. Yeah, it's Detroit Human something. I didn't want to say Human Revolution because it has a lot of robot things going on. I did not want to say Human Revolution. So this has been a pretty meaty episode of the FOXHOLE feed. If you're new to my series, I don't normally do episodes this long. This is more so because of there's so much to talk about and so much that's normally being announced. So yeah, it's been episode 23, day 0 of the, you know, Paris Game Show event. I'm going to do another episode tomorrow, day 1, because there's so many other people there. It's not just Sony that's there. There's other developers there, other publishers there, other games to talk about. So like, comment, subscribe. It's episode 23. Stay tuned, episode 24 of day 1 tomorrow. I'm going to be covering everything that they probably have to cover. And yeah, that's game.